Hello, welcome back to my channel for yet another round of HRCYED. And this is like triple HRCYED because we have reached the HRCYED mashup prompts, and that is basically pick a prompt from HRCYED 1 or 2 and mash them up with a HRCYED 3 prompt. There are a bunch of prompts from HRCYED 1 and 2 that are quite easy, in my opinion, to mash up and get something that you can quite easily find something for. So for example, by the hundreds, where you just do page counts, the non-fiction challenge, where it was just different types of or like different genres, no, different subjects of non-fiction, the queer rainbows, the A to C challenge, you know, there's a lot where you can quite easily pick a prompt from HRCYED 3 and then just find an author A to C. That would be real easy. Anyway, I picked a number of things. The only caveat was you couldn't pick like the if the prompts were basically the same. So like A to C author from HRCYED 1 and A to C author from another HRCYED. I don't think that actually is one. Anyway, saying that, I have picked the queer rainbow cover color and a color in the title, but I feel like that's not really the same. Anyway, obviously there's a ton of ways you can mix and match these prompts, but we are supposed to read 5 books, and I have mashed up 5 prompts, or 10 prompts to make 5 prompts actually. And for you guys, I would recommend, I picked by the hundreds and a number in the title. So I could recommend the 5th wave because it's a number of pages long, so obviously, and there's a 5 in the title. This is like science fiction dystopian where aliens are threatening the Earth and the army is doing everything it can to help humans survive, like civilians survive, or are they? Then we also have, let's see, yeah, that was the 5th wave. Then we have prompt number 2. I picked a non-fiction and a cover style, and I feel like this is, you know, minimalistic scientific cover type that's often used for this kind of non-fiction. But this is 100 Days to a Younger Brain, and I read this last year, I think, this year, early this year maybe. Ironically, it's about maximizing your memory. But I found it really insightful and helpful. It had some, you know, science behind it, but then it also gave you can do this, this, and this to better your brain. And then I picked the queer rainbow, where the cover is supposed to be a color in the queer rainbow, and then a color in the title. So I picked the Red Palace. I mean, the cover is red-ish, but you know, it's not like fully red. But it counts in my opinion. So this is Asian historical fiction set in Korea in the Joseon period. And it's basically a murder mystery where this servant girl is placed inside the palace to work, and she figures out that people are being killed, and she tries to figure out who is doing it. Then we also, for the same prompt, have black butterflies, because black is a color, and I feel like the cover of this book is encompassing a lot of the rainbow colors. So yeah, this is also historical fiction, but it's set in Sarajevo during the war that took place there in the 90s, I want to say. Quite harrowing, but also quite what's it called, educational, because I for one didn't know a lot about it, even though I do remember when I was a kid that this was going on and we were watching news stories from there. But you know, kind of disjointed, so I didn't like really understand what was going on. But yeah, so that was definitely educational. Then for a genre challenge, which was basically just read a book from each genre, I messed that up with an animal on the cover. And here you see a great big bear, polar bear it's called. This is The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, the first book in his Dark Materials, which is a fantasy series that was just, so great when I was a kid. And I did recently reread the first book here and still really enjoyed it. So, and then for the last one, I picked Avatar and a biome. So Avatar, you basically had to read a book with, air, water, fire, or earth on the cover or in the title, and the night ends with fire. And then for a biome, I'm interpreting these things as mountains. So, yeah. And this is basically sort of Mulan retelling inspired-ish, so you could also use this for the remix. And yeah, I read it quite recently and I enjoyed it, but I did think the prince was a bit wishy-washy. Yeah, but there are some recommendations for you, at least, if you haven't figured out what you want to do yet. And as for myself, for a number in the title and by the hundreds, I would really love to read A History of the World in 12 Shipwrecks. I think the actual number in the title prompt only goes to 10, but then there is like an extra prompt that says any random number, so that could be 12. I could also use this for a biome because this is obviously under the sea. This is a non-fiction about 12 shipwrecks and what we can deduce from the world at the time of their sinking. And then I think we also, I also picked Eternity in 3 acts, and honestly I can't remember who talked about this because it's not coming out until 2027, so the question is if it's even gonna come out in time. But it sounds really good because there's a god who's dying, and then the only hope for humanity is for them to make a new god. And they pick this guy who has lived like sort of like a monk, I think, and he's supposed to like go and take over from this dying god, and he gets a companion on his way, and they try to figure out how to do this. And then for non-fiction, I slashed it up with cover style, so I picked Not All Dead White Men, Classics and Misogyny in the Digital Age. I'm assuming it does what it says on the tin, and the cover style is like cartoony, if you will. Then for the queer rainbow cover and color in title, I picked The White Pedestal, How White Nationalists Use Ancient Greece and Rome to Justify Hate. Long title, but white is in the title and the cover is red. So I think that counts, and it sounds really interesting, and it's always good to have something to fire back with when they try to use history for their nefarious purposes. Then we have, I think this was also, for the same prompt, so The Red Famine by Anne Applebaum, about Stalin's war on the Ukraine, and again, red is in the cover, on the cover, and in the title, so that could also be a good shout. Then I had the mash-up of genre challenge and an animal on the cover, and here we have a rabbit dog, and this is a non-fiction about rabies, obviously. And finally we have the Avatar and a biome, and I couldn't really find anything as obvious or like in the title as the night ends with fire, so I picked this one instead because I feel like there's some flowers here and a tree, so that's earth on the cover. And then the biome is like abandoned city. Does that count as a biome? It does in my book. And this is about, you know, way ahead in the future. This robot was part of the war, but it retired. But someone comes after it because for revenge, I'm assuming, and it loses a leg. So it decides to go out in search of this leg, and it is accompanied by a human mechanic and a cyborg dog. So I think it sounds a little bit like The Murderbot Diaries and Monk and Robot by Becky Chambers. So yeah, so that's sounded really interesting, and there's a lot of non-fiction on this in this recommendation, or this TBR for me. So it was nice to get a fiction book on there. And I think maybe it's pretty short too. Is that only because it reminds me of Becky Chambers? I know not. But yeah, that is my TBR for the mash-up prompts. And I do feel like these last 3 ones with the Shiritori and the characters to authors were kind of hard, not gonna lie, because there were so many elements you had to consider. But the next ones here are just like pretty basic, you know, numbers in the title and color in the title. I feel like we can work with that, but that is for the next videos. So let me know what you are mashing up and where you are landing on your TBR. Are you picking, because you could also do like the entire genre challenge from, I believe it was HRCYED 1, because I think there's like 5 or 6 there. So just do the entire genre challenge from there, and then just mix up each one with a prompt from HRCYED 3. Let me know how you are doing it, and I'll see you soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye!